Got a special guest joining the Great Scott Show, and I keep telling people this: if they think it's the off season right now, they must not know many coaches. And Coach Terry Martin, formerly of Cecilia High School, now the current head coach of Breaux Bridge, joins me now live in the program. And Coach, my first question to you is pretty simple. With all the transition that's been in your life, with moving, finding your new staff, getting adjusted, all that, how much time have you had to just stop and think ever since the end of last football season until now?
Man. I tell you what, not much. I'm not sure if this is going to change for a while, but I still really feel like I'm in a constant catch-up mode. You know, trying to get things done that just typically would kind of happen on its own, and I guess after being in a certain place with really the same guys. I was at Cecilia for 12 years with just about the entire staff was there the whole time, where everybody gets in their routine. Everybody knows exactly how everything's going to be done, and we really didn't have to talk or meet much. I'm pretty fortunate that I inherited a really hard-working group of guys on the staff at Breaux Bridge. But just, there's just some things that are a little different, and it still seems like we just constantly, having to figure things out, and it still hadn't come close to where I'd like to be honest.
Head coach Terry Martin of the Breaux Bridge Tigers is our guest. And Coach, for some people that might not understand the situation well, or that weren't really familiar with your background, they would say, he went from Cecilia to Breaux Bridge. How do you do that? But the first time I had you on to talk about this, you pointed out that it is kind of like a homecoming for you. For people that missed out the first time we had our conversation, this Breaux Bridge isn't new to you. You're familiar with the folks there.
Right, and it's funny that you say that. When I walked in that very first day, when I went to meet the team for the first time, this was probably in March. When I walked through the doors, that back door that goes into the gym, the second I walked in, I immediately recognized the smell. And it's not a bad, it's not a bad smell. It's just that back office area. Just for whatever reason, I had a peculiar smell about it. And 12 years later, it hadn't changed a lick. Everything really looks a lot the same. It's funny. I'll go in some of those file cabinets and I'll find a folder and I'll look at it. And I realized that's my handwriting. I found several things that that are still there, that are still being used from 12 years before when I was there. So I did play at Cecilia, and when I graduated, when I finished up at USL, Cecilia didn't have a coach that could supervise a student teacher, and I knew the principal at Breaux Bridge. He had taught me actually at Cecilia. And so he had a head coach, Mike Mowat, that was certified to be a supervisor as far as student teachers. So, I figured, I'd go there, do my student teaching, and I could probably, go right back and jump right in at Cecilia with Coach Wagaspak, who is now the head coach. He was actually my position coach when I played. But, I went, did my student teaching, and was very fortunate. The job opened up at the end of December that I was able to walk right in. And, I can honestly say I really didn't know much about football at all. And I want to say I probably learned more in that first year than I've ever learned since. Just learned a ton of football in that first year. And played, was able to coach some great kids, very good athletes, and have some really good seasons with Coach Mowat. As most people know, I was there for 11 years before I ended up getting the head coaching job at Cecilia.
And yep, so he's headed back home to Breaux Bridge. I know that for some people, they might have been scratching their head, but it makes sense. It makes sense. So I wanted to let you tell that story. Last time we talked, right after the announcement came out, Coach, you said that you still needed to basically settle down, drop your boots, get the feel of the team and everything. Now that you've had some workouts, some stuff like that with these guys, who have you kind of started to peg as some of your leaders, maybe some upperclassmen, guys that have really helped you get your message out?
Again, it's like I said a little earlier, man, it's still very, very much a work in progress. Luckily, again, I've really been able to lean on all the defensive coaches because, we're not going to really mess with the defense much at all. I was very comfortable with what they run, having run it, having been there for 4 years. And actually, the first several years that I coached at Breaux Bridge, we all actually coached on both sides of the ball. So I did coach on the offensive side, but I also coached defensive backs. And so I was very familiar with how they ran things. when I actually moved over to Cecilia, we brought I had one coach come with me to Cecilia from Breaux Bridge, and we brought that same 50 that they're running today. We brought that defense with us there and ran it for a few years at Cecilia. So, I'm pretty familiar with it, but luckily I have some guys there who I'm able to let them kind of take care of everything on defense because as my luck would have it, maybe the year before, maybe this year, they actually changed a lot of the offensive terminology was very, very similar, formation-wise, and as far as all the play series, because it was what we had run when I was there. But last year, or maybe the year before, they went to totally a different wording system, and so it's really almost everything's brand new, pretty much on offense that we're trying to do. Again, 2 or 3 years ago, it would have been the same thing, a lot of the same terminology. But unfortunately, they had changed some of the way they called plays and some of the formations. So we still trying to catch up. I'm still, we've been, I mentioned when we were off air before, we go to St. Thomas more every Tuesday, and probably the last 4, maybe 5 years at Cecilia, we were just, totally a no-huddle team. And we really wasn't one of those teams that try to go, extremely fast all the time, per se, as some no-huddle guys go. But I just got very comfortable with liking why I don't like to huddle, so I'm able to see what the defense is doing, and we can change stuff at the line if we need to. Saying we're not there yet. Still, even after the summer, we still, the 7-on-7s we've been doing, we still kind of have to get the kids close by and remind them of what the concepts are called, what the signal looks like. So I'm just hoping, eventually by the time we get into the season, at least the base stuff, they have a good idea of what we're doing.
True.
But it's still been a challenge. It's still been a challenge trying to get everything across. And I just not, I don't think we have quite enough time in the day, to get everything done that I like to, or where I'd like to be, right now.
I got you, Coach. There's never enough time in the day for coaches. I've figured that out. There is some luxuries, though, that you get to work with. I mean, you brought up the defense. I mean, you clearly had a pretty good defense when you were at Cecilia, too, but I mean, everyone knows when you play Breaux Bridge, points are incredibly hard to come by. You said, I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So the fans should still expect to see a very similar attacking, aggressive defense like usual.
It's going to be, if anything, there will be still some minor things because, I think each year you have to look at what you have. Most coaches, keep the same base philosophy, whether it's on offense or defense. But because in high school you kind of get different kids, year in and year out, some years you may run it more. Some years, you may run, last year we had some pretty big guys up front, so we were more of a zone team. Whereas, some years we may be a little more athletic, so we might run more power counter, because we can pull and do different things. So I think you kind of have to adjust a few things. And just what I've found is that there's not many, if any, of those typical Breaux Bridge defensive linemen that everyone's has been so accustomed to for so long, or that I remember, when we were there. And it's not nearly the size of some of the guys, that I expected. So, we've talked, just in this over the summer, we may do a few more things. We may move the front around a little bit more, maybe just to kind of protect our linebackers a little bit and let them run a little bit better because we are not that big. At all, as far as our linebacking crew, we have a couple of kids I think they can be pretty good and can run really well. But, again, it's not those 185, 190-pound linebackers that run 4.5 that, that you've seen so many go through there. So, there will be maybe some minor changes, but it's not really changing the philosophy. It's just to go with what we have, with the current personnel we have.
And another thing that people usually know with Breaux Bridge is that you guys have a lot of incredible athletes that usually some of them will play both ways, maybe on defense and offense. You said you've got to try to get the guys up to speed with what you want to do and the verbiage and get more comfortable in the playbook because, like you said, you like to run a fast tempo style offense. But at least you can know in the back of your mind the pieces are there athletically for you to play with. That has to be nice.
And again, that's kind of going in. That's was one of the things I was pretty excited about. But again, you have peaks and valleys, in most schools, and just again across the board, I think by the time it's all said and done, I'm hoping that we can be pretty athletic. We played without, I want to say maybe 4 starters just on defense in the spring game. Just guys. 2 or 3 were late season injuries from last football season. guys that hadn't been released yet. And now one of them has been able to start doing the 7-on-7s, and one of the more talented guys on the team. But I'm just hoping by the time we get there, there was a possibility of one guy that we didn't know if we'd get back at all. That today, we find out maybe he might be able to play. So I'm just hoping once everything comes down to when the regular season starts, we have those guys available to us that can make us, eventually be okay.
Yeah, and Coach,
but
just
again,
go ahead.
It's still just, especially on the offensive side of the ball, still very much a learning process. So.
All right, and Coach, I'm not gonna, out of consideration for the kids, I won't ask for names, but I hope those kids get back to health too, because I always like to see coaches get to work with their entire tool set of stuff. I do have a question about a specific kid. Julian Leon, Sonny Leon, I think is his nickname, started to kind of take over the reins offensively towards the end of last season. He's a young buck, got a large pool of talent and a high ceiling to grow into. I know it's just still been a short time you've gotten to work with him, but how has he impressed you with his leadership qualities, and you feel like he's growing into some of those puppy paws?
Yeah, he's again, you mentioned he's right at 6'1", and when he did his physical the other day, he's touching 215. So he's a big, strong kid, and just through all the things that we've done, he's got a good background. But there was a few different drills that we've tried to implement, and I think the biggest thing with him has just been consistency. He was only a sophomore, and how difficult it is for any sophomore to play, but especially as being a quarterback. That's really, honestly asking a lot, of a kid as a sophomore to come in. And you don't always see many sophomores that do well, but he has really grown just in the last couple of months as far as, just whenever he gets all his mechanics down to a consistent level, he can be as good as anyone. And then there's a couple of other kids, too. I'm excited. There's a kid right behind him in age, freshman Cole Mouton. He's going to be a sophomore. He started as a freshman at shortstop for the semifinal baseball team. And, he's a kid that I think has a lot of potential. And as you can't just go with one guy a lot of times as far at any time, one play, and you have to play the guy that's right behind him. So both of those guys have really done well this summer when we've done the 7-on-7s. We have a kid that played tight end receiver, Tyreek Davis. He's going to be a senior. He's about 6'3". He's really starting to kind of come into his own. He will line up at tight end at times, but he's one of the kids, kind of like the kid I had last year, Rusty Roban, that you can move around a lot. You can split him out as a number 2 guy and even as a number 1 receiver out there by himself. We have a couple of other seniors that again, it's been a while. It's taken a little while for them to kind of grasp everything. But we have at least 3 other senior receivers that I think can be pretty decent before it's all said and done. So I'm hoping, again, by the time, the next few weeks, we can kind of get the base of everything down and, have the ability to hopefully both, run and throw the football.
Coach Terry Martin of the Breaux Bridge Tigers is our guest here in the Great Scott Show. And, Coach, you talked a lot about the adjustments that you guys are trying to make offensively, defensively with the X's and O's. But has there been much of a change that you've had to put in place culture-wise? Or has there been stuff that you've tried to maybe change the message on a little bit? Or has it pretty much just been jump into the pool and start swimming with the current?
It's actually, it is a little different. I mean, one good thing, again, when Coach Mowa was there and then Coach Paul Broussard too just took it, right over with the same, mentality, same work ethic. The kids really have been worked hard. They've been pushed a lot physically. And, that's one thing that I've been really satisfied with. But, everybody is a little different. And there were some things that I just kind of did on my own once I left Breaux Bridge and became a head coach. And, there has been, as far as when you just slight differences of how things are done, that it has taken a while. There are, there's some things that I think they're going to, have to grow into. And honestly, it's going to probably be more the upcoming classes that really kind of get the hang of it, because I went through this when I got to see I was the 4th guy in 4 years, 4th different head coach that senior group had. They had Coach Wagersmack, then they had Coach Towery, then they had Coach Trey Sutton, and then I showed up for their senior year. And so I never quite felt comfortable as far as that they knew exactly how, and which you couldn't blame them. I mean, they had been through 4 different guys. And as far as the most of the varsity coaches, this senior group has actually been there more than any of those guys that are working with on the varsity staff. I think the longest any of those varsity coaches has been there has been 3 years. You have Kyle Cormier and Gabe Cormier who have been there for the longest time, but for the last several years, they only work with the freshmen. And now I'm in the process of trying to get Kyle to come back up and help with the varsity receivers. But, those kids have really been there longer than most of those coaches. So that has probably more than anything else is what's taken the longest time. Just to understand, this is how we're going to do these. This is as far as just what's expected all the time. There are some differences. And so that probably has taken a little bit longer than I thought it would.
Coach Terry Martin has been our guest. One last one for you, Coach, and then I'll let you roll. I know you got some important business to handle today. But between today and the start of football season, game one kickoff, what does your team need to accomplish, and what's kind of the message to the men?
I think, again, more than anything else, is just getting on the same page on how we're going to do things, on what's expected, not just only on the field, but it's just as important, if not more important, when they're out in the community on their own, and coaches are not watching them. Again, that's been one of the biggest things. I think more than anything else, we need to work on just the team chemistry. It's a really large senior group, but when it's all said and done, to be quite honest, I'm not sure how many of those seniors are going to actually, some of them will be starters, but some of them might only be role players, whether it be special teams or other roles. But to me, the most important thing for this group is how they're going to work together and how they're going to stay together when that first, bit of adversity comes. Because, we all know it's going to come off, and then it's going to come soon, once the season starts. So I think that's the most critical thing for these guys right now, is to really trust in each other and to do things the right way and to stay together. To me, are going to be our biggest issue.
Coach Martin has been our guest. Same coach, different home, different colors, but it's still home for you, Coach. Thank you so much for stopping by, and I'll be having to stop by practice pretty soon, so I'll be seeing you soon.
Sounds good, man. Thank you for having me on.
No problem, Coach.